You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
only Rosie O'Donnell.
Businessman, deal maker, billionaire, playboy, comedian, con artist, liar, fascist, bigot, xenophobe, homophobe, transphobe, literally Hitler.
He's literally Hitler!
Teflon Don, dear leader, 45, President of the United States of America. Donald Trump has been many things to many people over the years, one of, if not, the most polarizing figure in human history. Just the mere murmur of his name will instantly cause your half-cocked uncle or lesbian aunt to tailspin into their respective radical diatribes. If you're an average person, it's almost impossible to have an opinion on the man, as everything that's said about him is either filtered through the lamestream media, a conservative Twitter anon who turns out to actually be into gay pup play, or a non-binary manic depressive who's currently on hormone replacement therapy, or The View. Where did he come from? Was he good at selling? What did he sell? Why can you no longer wear a red hat in public without being catcalled by cat ladies? All of this will be revealed and more, because this is the story of Donald J. Trump. Act 1, The Magnate. Quick little editor's note here. Initially, I want to put this out as like one piece of one thing, covering the entirety of Donald Trump's life leading up to his second presidency, but this video would be very long. It would take me a long time to make, and I just need to put out content on my channel or else I'll die in the algorithm. So I'm deciding to break this one up. It does end on a cliffhanger. Sorry in advance. Frederick and Elizabeth Christ Trump emigrated from Germany to Queens, New York City in 1907. Upon arriving in the land of the free, Frederick began developing real estate, but died a little over a decade later during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. He left an estate valued at $31,359 to his wife Elizabeth, which roughly translates to $655,000 in 2024 money. She'd carry on the family business, building homes on some empty lots which were already owned by the estate and selling them for profit. The business was then passed down to her middle son, Frederick Christ Trump, aka Fred. In the late 1920s, Fred built hundreds of single-family homes in Queens and then expanded out to Brooklyn. By the 1940s, he'd upgrade to building apartment complexes, mostly in Brooklyn, using federal loan guarantees. If you're a dummy like me and don't know what loan guarantees are, or federal loan guarantees for that matter, let me give you a little added context here. Essentially, what's happening here is the government would be taking the financial hit if the borrower couldn't pay back on the loan. For example, you have money, you are the bank. I want to build a house but don't have the money. So you, the bank, lend me the money, but I go bankrupt due to my crippling crypto gambling addiction. Jokes aside, this means that I now don't have the money to pay you back. But if there's a federal loan guarantee, then in this same scenario where I go bankrupt, the government steps in and guarantees to make sure that you, the lender, the bank, get your money back using tax dollars. Why would the government want to give out free money like this? Because this was the 1940s, post-World War I, post the Great Depression, and during World War II. The global empire at the time, England, was currently entangled in a feud with a sharply dressed amphetamine addict who had a couple of wacky thoughts about der Juden. So before the United States decided to join, it took the time to not only stockpile their weaponry and soldiers, but also build out its industry and manufacturing. A move that enabled the English Empire to crumble post-World War II and the United States to sit on the throne and become the new superpower of the world. I say all that to say, the US needs to build affordable housing, and quickly. Ergo, Fred Trump utilized these federal loan guarantees to expand his own housing empire, even building homes for naval personnel and ship workers in Virginia and Pennsylvania. Which seems like a bit of a weird tangent to go on about Fred Trump, who wasn't even, like our star of the video here. But working directly with the federal government had some other perks I've yet to mention, mainly being able to network and form social bonds with politicians, aka the people behind all of the roadblocks and red tape of the real estate industry, which will be relevant for one of Fred's sons, Donald John Trump was born June 14th, 1946 in New York City, New York. He was the fourth of 5 children, and another of those 5 kids, his older brother, Fred Trump Jr., would have a profound effect on Donald. Fred Jr. was an alcoholic. He died from a booze-related heart attack in 1981 at the age of 42. But when he was alive, he would always warn Donald about the dangers of drinking and smoking, leading to his younger brother being straight edge, a message Donald passed down to his kids later in life.
I don't drink or smoke.
You never have?
No, I never have. I had a great brother who taught me a lesson: don't drink. He had a problem with alcohol and smoke a lot, but I tell people, no drugs, no drinking, no cigarettes.
Yeah.
I tell that to my kids all the time. I'd say no drugs, no drinking, no smoking.
Donald Trump attended the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Finance and Commerce, graduating with a bachelor's in 1968. He put that degree to work in the same year, working for his dad, Fred Trump Sr., joining the very same holding company his grandmother had started back in the 1920s. Donald was tasked with managing a fleet of rental properties ranging somewhere between 10,000 and 22,000 units. In 1971, he was promoted to president of the company and renamed it in 1973 to the Trump Organization. It still exists to this day and has since had its reins passed down to his 2 sons, Donald Jr. and Eric Trump, due to Donald Trump Sr. being a little busy running the greatest country on God's green earth.
Putin uses the N-word. I call it the N-word. He uses the N-word.
Just like his father before him, Donald had ambitions of aggressive expansion, wanting to grow his market from Queens and Brooklyn into the greater New York area, focusing on Manhattan, Atlantic City, and New Jersey. Now, obviously, Donald Trump didn't come from nothing. He didn't make it out the mud or whatever rappers are saying these days. Obviously, his father had money, and when starting out, this is a big point of contention for the Donald Trump haters. He was given a loan by his father for what they claim to be $1 million. Their argument usually goes something like this. Oh yeah, you think Trump's a good businessman? Did you know he started out with $1 million loan from his dad's? Which, it is true, yes, I'm not denying that, obviously. But I always just thought it was a bit of a weird argument to make. Like, yes, he got $1 million from his dad, but going from being like broke to making $1 million is way easier than starting out with $1 million and growing that into $1 billion. Like, I think people's idea of how much $1 billion is a little skewed. It's a lot of money. Regardless on how you feel of it, Trump was given a loan. It's unclear actually what the exact dollar amount is, though. It actually might be more, it might be closer to $9.6 million. I've seen that claim be floated around, but I don't think it makes a huge difference though, because the startup capital, yeah, it's all well and good. $1 million is a lot of money, fine. But if you're the type of character that's making the argument that he started from a place of privilege, that's not even the most helpful thing Fred Trump added to his son's toolbox. He'd introduced Donald to all of his political colleagues, meaning Donald was directly jacked into the seedier side of the real estate industry, meeting all the right people and knowing just whose palms to grease. This helped Donald expand the Trump Organization past just residential buildings and into the realm of commercial properties. If you know anything about Donald J. Trump, these weren't strip malls in Schenectady, New York. We're talking prime real estate, luxury properties in the heart of the busiest city in the world. One of the first properties to be added to his portfolio was the then derelict Commodore Hotel. In 1978, he and the Hyatt hotel chain purchased the defunct hotel and began renovations. $100 million, and 2 years later, it was reopened under the new moniker, the Hyatt Grand Central, in 1980. This was done on a first-of-its-kind profit-sharing agreement with the city of New York. He was granted a 40-year property tax abatement, meaning he paid little to no taxes during that period. Donald managed to leverage his father's connections to bring a dying New York landmark back to life. Say what you want about Trump and getting a giant loan from his papa and some powerful allies, but in less than a decade, he went from sizable real estate manager to an absolute magnate. Because with the money that started rolling in from the Grand Hyatt Central he purchased in the late 70s, in 1980, he began buying everything on the Monopoly board, so to speak. 1983, the debut of Trump Tower, a 58-story skyscraper which contained office spaces, retail stores, a residential complex, and a $300 million price tag. 1984, he'd buy the New Jersey Generals, a football team in the short-lived USFL. His aspirations was to transition it into a full-blown NFL team. Clearly that never happened, spending somewhere in the ballpark of $5 to $10 million. 1984, Trump Plaza, a hotel and casino in Atlantic City, $210 million. 1985, Trump's Castle, another casino resort in Atlantic City, $275 million. Also in 1985, Trump purchased the iconic Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida. Initially, this mansion was built in the 1920s as a winter home for the heiress to the Post cereal brand. At the time, it was the most expensive residential home in recorded human history, which didn't belong to a member of a royal family. Trump made an initial bid of $15 million, which was rejected. So he bought the plot of land that was in between Mar-a-Lago and the ocean from the owner of KFC, who unfortunately wasn't Colonel Sanders. He then threatened to build a towering domicile to block the view of the ocean from Mar-a-Lago, which would potentially drive down the market value of the mansion. So they ended up selling it to him for somewhere between $7 and $10 million, less than his initial offering. 1988, he bought Nabila, later renaming it Trump Princess, a 282-foot super yacht, which at the time was the second largest yacht in the world, $29 million. 1989, he launched a short-lived airline called Trump Shuttle, $365 million. 1990, Trump Taj Mahal, then the largest casino in the world, $1.2 billion. By 1990, Trump's net worth ballooned to $1.7 billion, as he had become one of the most well-respected businessmen in the world. But let's end this montage and take a short break from business, mostly because it was hurting my voice, and move on to Trump as a father and a husband. In 1977, Trump married his first wife, Ivana Zelnikachova. She was a Czech model, you get the point. They'd have 3 children together, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. But just like the incredible business high Donald was on, so was his penis. He had many erections. I just want to apologize. I actually don't know where this analogy was supposed to go. He was sleeping around a lot, that's what I was trying to say. One of his affairs that he was having had become the subject of all of the tabloid magazines at the time. The celebrity gossip was billionaire Donald Trump was cheating on his wife Ivana with the Hollywood actress Marla Maples. Rumors became reality as Trump divorced his first wife, Ivana, in 1990, and Donald's relationship with Marla would move out of the shadows and into the light as Marla would get pregnant and give birth to the 4th child, Tiffany Trump, in 1993. The two married shortly after, but just like Donald had done to his first wife, the tabloids heavily speculated that Marla was having an affair with one of Donald Trump's bodyguards, leading to the two divorcing in 1999.
Said we have a great country, but it's not going to be great for long if we're going to continue to lose $200 billion a year. You're going to get into the early 90s, 1990, 1991, and the whole thing's going to blow because this country cannot continue to support Japan and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and many other countries that are much wealthier than we are. We're not a wealthy country. You can't be a wealthy country when you're losing the kind of money that we're losing.
Donald Trump's love life wasn't the only thing that was on shaky grounds come 1990, so was America's economy. A lot of factors played a part into the economic downturn. One of the main components was America's involvement in the Gulf War, which wasn't the Gulf of America. It's a different Gulf.
I'm just admiring it as I look at it.
Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Kuwait, leading to the 1990 oil price shock. So there was a cost spike on oil, which mixed with the Federal Reserve's restrictive monetary policy and the Tax Reform Act of 1986, this would lead to the US dollar becoming unstable and further leading to inflation and a recession. Unfortunately for the Donald, this put him $5 billion in debt, of which $900 million was personally guaranteed. This meant that if the Trump organization cannot pay back the debt owed, and they filed for bankruptcy, which they did, that the bank could now go after Trump's personal wealth and assets to recoup the $900 million. Trump was forced to sell his airline and Trump Princess, while Trump Taj Mahal, Trump Plaza, and Trump's Castle all declared bankruptcy. He remortgaged almost all of his remaining properties and/or had to sell off some of the shares to third parties, while also reducing his personal yearly budget down to $450,000, with his net worth plummeting from a then career high of $1.7 billion to negative $900 million. Now, down on his luck, the defiant Trump decided to pull himself up by his bootstraps and began to exploit one of his untapped skill sets, which not only helped him claw his way out of financial ruin, but also crawl his way into the hearts of America. Act 2. You're fired. Now in debt and broke, Trump was forced to sell off his Scarface-like empire. He may have been at a career low, but Trump didn't give up. There's this saying, as one door closes, another opens. Or something like that, who cares? For Donnie, the door had been slammed shut in his face. But to his credit, he reset, looked inward, and discovered a new key, which went on to open many doors in the future for our fair-haired friend. Our totally natural haired friend. Don Trump would take his already somewhat public persona and crank the dials to 11 and evolve himself into a full-on pro wrestling-like character. I mean, if you were to tell me Vince McMahon's Mr. McMahon character was based completely on Donald Trump and he was basically just doing like an exaggerated version of his personality, I'd believe you. I wouldn't even have to look it up.
Keep it up, I'm a nigga.
His first real taste of fame came a few years earlier, back when he was still in his rise to the top montage. He wrote a wildly popular memoir / entrepreneurial self-help book, I guess you can call it. It was called The Art of the Deal. It was written by Donald J. Trump himself, alongside a journalist and a good guy, great guy, named Tony Schwartz, allegedly. I say that because years later, Tony and the book's publisher, Howard Kaminsky, claimed Trump played no part in writing it, but they're probably totally gay.
Bunch of losers. They're losers. They're babies.
The book quickly rose to the top of the New York Times bestseller list and remained there for 13 weeks. This was in the 80s when every single book that's released didn't make it to that list, so it actually meant a lot more. More importantly, it also quickly jumped itself to number 2 on Trump's favorite book of all times list.
That's my second favorite book of all time. Do you know what my first is? The Bible. Nothing beats the Bible. Nothing beats the Bible, not even The Art of the Deal, not even close.
Trump went on to write many more books like Surviving at the Top and The Art of the Comeback, but none of those were more successful than his first outing, most likely. I don't actually know. The Art of the Deal was the only book I knew the name of prior to doing any research, so I'm probably right, and that's good enough for me. Throughout his career, Trump wasn't just a real estate magnate. I love that word. He would make sporadic appearances on morning shows, CNN, Oprah, Howard Stern, etc. During the 1990s and into the 2000s, while he was rebuilding his empire, he'd cross over into Hollywood, making cameo appearances as himself in various films.
Waldo, you're the best son money can buy.
The most popular of which definitely is Home Alone 2.
Where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
Super iconic. Also, Zoolander, which I completely forgot about until I was researching.
Look, without Derek Zoolander, male modeling wouldn't be what it is today.
In 1996, Donald Trump bought 3 beauty pageants: Miss USA, Miss Universe, which unfortunately is only relegated to Earth for the time being, and my personal favorite, Miss Teen USA, where red-blooded Americans can watch and rate the hottest girls between the ages of fertile 14 and stinky binky 19. Ew, gross, so old. As I said before, Trump used the 1990s as a rebuilding period, exploiting his charming personality and the public spotlight to help fast-track his way back to the top of the world. To be clear, he wasn't dead broke. He still had properties like Mar-a-Lago and never stopped adding new real estate assets to his portfolio, such as in 1996 he acquired a then vacant 70-story office building in Manhattan, renovated it, and rebranded it to the Trump Building. In 1998, in collaboration with other investors, he purchased the General Motors building for $878 million, later selling it in 2003 for a reported $1.4 billion, which at the time was the highest price paid for an office building. In 1999, Donald's father, Fred Trump, passed away at the age of 93, leaving his prodigal son an inheritance of somewhere in the ballpark of $250 to $300 million. So even though 1990 may have been bleak, By the time the new millennium rolled around, old Donny Boy managed to pull a financial 180. But nothing could have been a larger turning point than The Apprentice.
Carrie, are you gay?
I am indeed, yes,
Carrie,
sir.
you're fired.
In the early 2000s, there was a boom in reality TV. It wasn't wholly a new concept. MTV broke ground in the US with The Real World all the way back in 1992, and Japan had already been deep into the trend by the 2000s with shows like Susumu Denpa Shonen, featuring a Japanese man being locked in a room for over a year with no food, clothes, or any entertainment, needing to subsist on nothing but items won from magazine sweepstakes while being completely naked the entire time. Shameless plug. I have a video covering this topic, which is probably playing at 1.5 speed right now on your screen to indicate to the audience that there's a breadth of content you're missing out on. Back to the show. The United States' reality TV boom was in the early 2000s, particularly with shows like Big Brother and Survivor, both debuting in the year 2000. There was also The Amazing Race, which debuted in 2001, American Idol, which debuted in 2002, and another popular heavy hitter releasing around this time was none other than The Apprentice. Debuting in 2004, the show was hosted by Donald Trump himself. Each season of this competitive reality show consisted of two teams that were filled with contestants who were either business graduates or had some kind of similar work experience. Each week, the two teams would be given assignments that usually revolved around sales or marketing. Whoever did a better job at the end of the week won that week's competition, while the losing team saw one of their members get hit with Trumpian Keno.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
This is where Trump coined the phrase, "You're fired."
You're fired.
My impressions are so bad. From what I can tell, this wasn't something he'd say in his personal life or in business prior to the show. So in reality, it was probably some showrunner or writer or someone told him to say this line. But he definitely took it and turned it into like this catchphrase for himself that he would be known for many years to come. Whatever the etymology is, Trump adopted it, and the phrase became even more synonymous with the man than Paris Hilton was with "That's hot." Each week, a contestant would be fired until the pool of talent was whittled down to just one, and they'd win the grand prize of a one-year $250,000 contract working directly for Mr. Trump as his apprentice. The show had these board member meeting segments which served as a vehicle for Trump to scold and eventually fire the contestants. These segments also featured a recurring cast of board members who are there to give instructions and guidance to the contestants. Some of the notable regulars were Trump's now grown-up children, Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric. The Apprentice was an instant smash success, being very dominant in its first year on the air, ranking number 7th overall in the ratings and averaging 20.7 million viewers across its 15 episodes. The success of the show spawned 15 seasons and 192 episodes in total, sorta. They also created a variant called Celebrity Apprentice, which was the same show with celebrities instead of yucky normies. Technically, both versions of the show share the same continuity, if you will. So seasons 1 to 6 were OG Apprentice with normies. Season 7 to 9 was the celebrity variant. Season 10 went back to yucky normie mode, but I assume viewership dropped, so season 11 to 14 switched back to celebrities. And then there's season 15, but we don't talk about that one. I'll explain why later in the video. More likely in a separate video though, because I have a feeling I'm going to break this up because it's going to be like a 5-hour video. There was a bunch of failed spin-off projects too, like a dating show variant called The Ultimate Merger. They tried to give Martha Stewart her own version of The Apprentice, but it bombed and was canceled after one season. Also, this variant was filmed in her actual home during her house arrest for insider trading, so it may have been a little too soon type of situation. There was also an ill-fated video game adaptation released on PC in 2006, which is currently sitting at a 25 on Metacritic. The Apprentice effectively turned the already public figure into a household name. By this point, he had made cameo appearances on shows like The Jeffersons, The Fresh Prince, a personal favorite, The Drew Carey Show, Sex and the City, and The Ali G Show. After his boost in popularity, he had multiple appearances on SNL before they ridiculed him for years on end.
Well, Alec, if you don't want that pardon for murdering that woman in cold blood, you can call it first degree, you can call it whatever you want, but it was not good.
Days of Our Lives. He was in a skit for the 58th Primetime Emmy Awards, and he had what is still one of the best, if not the best, Comedy Central roasts. I've seen it reported in a 2020 New York Times article that The Apprentice was his real financial 180 after he went broke in the 1990s. They claim that through being paid by NBC and leveraging his newfound fame to license his name on properties, he was able to earn $427.4 million. They make it seem like The Apprentice had actually been his main source of income, or at least it was being heavily implied. There's other articles that use this New York Times piece as a reference point to state that The Apprentice saved Donald Trump from being broke. Yeah, I would say the show did play a major role in revitalizing Trump financially. That's fair enough, but I think given the facts I laid out earlier, I would heavily disagree with this statement. My favorite crossover event from this era was a storyline in the WWE in 2007. I'm a wrestling dork. Give me a second here. I'm going to spend way more time on this than I need to. Also, a little editor's note here. You're about to see a lot of footage from WWE 2K25. Which I'm going to inject because WWE is like real aggressive with copyright claims on YouTube. They effectively took down one of my videos that I did on, who did I even do it on? New Jack. That's what I did it on. So I don't want to play games with them again, so it's just not worth it. So video game footage incoming. That being said, Vince and Trump's relationship began back in 1988 when WrestleMania 4 was hosted by the man himself and took place at Trump Plaza. Well, sort of. In true wrestling fashion, it actually took place at a nearby Atlantic City convention hall. Trump had sponsored the event, so this was a way for them to still promote his name, making it seem like it was happening in one of his venues, but for whatever reason, they decided to hold it at a completely different venue nearby. They'd run it back in 1998, also pretending to host WrestleMania 5 at Trump Plaza. In 2004, at WrestleMania 20, Trump made his third appearance in the WWE when Jesse the Body Ventura interviewed the Don, who was watching from the crowd. During this interview, he officially endorsed Ventura for his 2008 presidential run, which never came to fruition. But the meat and potatoes here is on January the 8th, 2007. There was a Monday Night Raw segment where a fake Donald Trump defeated a fake Rosie O'Donnell. The two have been like long-standing enemies in real life, so that's why this happened. A few weeks later, on the January the 29th edition of Raw, Vince had a fan appreciation night, which Trump interrupted by dropping money in the crowd, a way to one-up his fellow billionaire. Later, the two would confront each other and set up the Battle of the Billionaires. When they first interacted back in the 1980s, it wasn't even public knowledge that Vince was the owner of the WWE. He was doing like commentary and interviews at the time. By 2007, he was fully into his Mr. McMahon character, which is essentially, like I said, a cartoonish version of Trump. They'd even share the same catchphrase, though Vince did say it first. So for the two to square off in the Battle of the Billionaires, it was kind of a no-brainer. The challenge was laid down for WrestleMania 23. The two would each pick a champion, Vince picking Umaga, RIP, and Trump picking Bobby Lashley. The two champions would do battle in a no DQ match, and whichever billionaire lost by proxy would have their heads shaved. This match led to a very meme-worthy moment, which I'm sure you've probably seen, where Trump attacks Vince McMahon during the match. You wanna tweak it up with me and I'ma show you how they go. And obviously, Trump won the match and Vince was forced to shave his head. His final WWE appearance was in 2013, where Donald J. Trump was officially inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as a celebrity, not as a wrestler. In 2005, Donald Trump married his third and final and hottest wife, Melania. At the time, she had been a Slovenian model, and the two would have a child, Trump's final child, little Baron Trump. As we move from the 2000s into the 2010s, believe it or not, Trump was popular and well-liked. It's pretty incredible jumping in here and seeing what people's opinions were of Trump prior to him jumping into politics. It's, night and day. Like I said, he was well-liked, particularly with the blacks. Rappers would use Trump as a punchline quite often.
Yeah, thumbs up. Home see more hoes in the golf course, hold on the trunk up. Up like Donald Trump, up, say swing like them Trump. I'm a good looking rapper, I ain't trying to stunt. I'ma fire my blunt like Donald Trump. Make the block bump, boys in the hood, call me Black Donald Trump. Feeling like Donald Trump back in the day. I'm Donald Trump in a white tee and white ones.
I buy cars with straight cash, have meetings with Donald Trump. Y'all meet with Honda.
I'm bald and Donald Trump taking dollars from y'all. Donald Trump. Woo.
The most famous of which was Mac Miller, also R.I.P., and his first breakout single, Donald Trump.
Take over the world when I'm on my Donald Trump.
The 2011 single peaked at number 75 on the Billboard Hot 100 and ended up going platinum. Initially, Trump was honored to have a piece of pop culture dedicated to him, shouting out Mac Miller, saying he's the new Eminem, which is hilarious if you know anything about rap music. Unfortunately, a year later, something flipped in Trump's mind, and he attempted to sue Mac, demanding royalties for the use of his name and likeness.
A young rapper named Mac Miller just did a song called Donald Trump, and I've just been told it hit over 54 million. 54 million people. I want some money, Mac. Give me some money. I'm entitled to 25% at least.
If Barron Trump was a little older, I'm sure it would have been sorted out. But unfortunately, this created an irreparable rift between the two titans of entertainment. As famous and as popular as Trump was in the early 2010s, it would pale in comparison to the media circus beginning in 2015.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.